So let's chat with the South Cambs candidates. Ian Solemn, good morning.
Good morning.
Ian for Lib Dems. And Dan Grief is from Labour. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Kev.
Right.
Nice to speak to you this time of day.
And to you too. Both of you are candidates campaigning for remaining. Would either of you have considered standing aside to try and ensure a Remain majority? Dan first.
Well, I'm not going to stand aside for the very simple reason that I want to deliver a people's vote. And the only way that that is possibly going to happen is with a Labour government. We have said very clearly now there will be a people's vote that will happen if Labour's in office and in the first few months of us being in office, and Remain would be clearly on the ballot paper. So I urge not only the Liberal Democrats to get behind us, but all voters in South Cambridgeshire as well.
So that's a no. Ian, what's your answer to the same question?
Certainly we won't be standing aside in South Cambridgeshire. Dan may articulate Labour policy all he wants, but the fact is in South Cambridgeshire, the Liberal Democrats are the strongest Remain party by some margin. We've had fantastic local election results last year, topped the poll by a huge margin in the European elections in this particular part of the world. So, and we're hearing just lots of on the doorsteps that people want to vote Lib Dem this time.
Dan, Labour has been criticised in the past for not having a clear policy on Brexit. You've kind of touched on it in your opening statements. Are you convinced that the people listening to this conversation now believe that you actually have a clear policy now?
Yeah, well, I can go through it step by step to make it as clear as crystal. So the first step is, of course, that before this general election, MPs like Daniel Zeichner, who we have a lot to thank for this, were really pushing for the people's vote. The Liberal Democrats, the SNP, of course, went for the general election option sooner. I think it should have been later. And that does annoy me because it meant on the 31st of October, instead of the Conservative headlines being that they had failed to deliver their deal they kept talking about, instead we were talking about the general election. But there you go. So let's just move that on to the next step then. The only way now to deliver that people's vote is with a Labour government. Okay, Jo Swinson has said clearly she will not form a coalition with us if we had a minority, so we have to have a majority. So that said, if we take to the next step, if, for instance, South Cambridgeshire had a Liberal Democrat MP, or the same for South East Cambs or for Cambridge, what is the good of that if you had a minority or majority Conservative government whereby you're then going to see the delivery of Boris Johnson's deal? Or the alternative is that you have Labour MPs in those seats, and those Labour MPs in a government could deliver the people's vote that we desperately need to sort out the Brexit mess. And finally, if you're a Remainer, that is the best option for you. The Liberal Democrats are not going to form a government. I don't know what Ian's thoughts on that
Well,
are.
Ian, let's pause there and get your response to that.
Well, the Liberal Democrats have been campaigning since the last referendum for a people's vote. Labour Party haven't been consistent on this. We have tried and tried and tried. 17 times we have tabled motions in Parliament to get a people's vote. They haven't gone through. This Parliament was not going to give us a people's vote. It was time to go for a general election. We wouldn't have had that general election without Labour support as well. Labour were in favour of that general election. Now, the fact is, Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson are both completely unfit for the office of Prime Minister. That's certainly what the people of South Cambridgeshire are telling all the teams out on the doorstep. So that's what we're. If you vote for a Liberal Democrat MP, then you'll get that representation of the liberal values of South Cambridgeshire. Dan,
let me ask you this question. To those people who think that trying to renegotiate a new deal and then have the people's vote, the referendum, within 6 months, there are those who might say that those timescales look fantasy.
Well, okay, if you look at what happened in the last year, Keir Starmer and Jeremy Corbyn had meetings with Michel Barnier. They had conversations about the potential of what that new deal might look like. And it did seem to include differences on the customs relationship that we'd have the EU compared to what Boris Johnson is suggesting. Now, I don't know if the new deal they would try to negotiate would have that, But I do know in the past when they've had those negotiations, they've been very successful. But there is a huge, huge difference in the deal that would be offered. Labour has always said, and it will always say, we'll put the security of this country, the security of people's jobs, their livelihoods first, so that any deals offered to the leavers, so that they do feel like they've got a say in this referendum as well, of course they must do, that they would have a deal that would secure their jobs and livelihood. And that's why Labour's been working that plan for a long time now.
Okay, listen, I'm sorry, we are running out of time. Ian, I want to leave the final word to you, just to kind of even up the balance. What are your responses to what you just heard Dan mentioning?
Well, I think there's a real risk with the Labour plan that the EU is getting tired of continually offering extensions. And what are they going to negotiate? They have negotiated 2 deals now with the UK government, and Labour are proposing to negotiate yet another deal. I think there's a real danger that they won't want to extend, and then we're facing another cliff edge. We just need to stop Brexit now and focus on what matters and a better vision for the country.
Ian, thank you. Now, listen, 2 really short final points. Nearly 40% of your potential constituents voted to leave. In literally 5 seconds each, are you not worried about alienating them completely? Ian?
I'm always happy to engage with people who voted to leave. I think that they have genuine concerns about the way that things are working in the country. We've got to articulate our vision for the future to them.
Okay, and I needed a short answer there. Dan, what's your response to that final question?
Well, okay, firstly, we need to have democracy to sort out the Tory party almost destroying our constitution and breaking the trust of
40% of your potential constituents voted to leave. Are you worried about alienating them completely, was the question.
I've got this, Kev. Don't you worry. I'm not going to not answer your question.
Well, so I need an answer. I need an answer now, please.
I'm answering now. The only way that we're going to resolve this is through democracy, and that is the people's vote to try to break through the deadlock and the mess that we've been left with by this government.